The Senate now has before it for final consideration Senate Bill number 1211. The Secretary will read the bill.
In the Senate Bill 1211 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to wolves, to revise provisions regarding the powers and duties of the Idaho Wolf Depredation.
Madam President,
Senator Burtonshaw.
I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of Senate Bill 1211 be dispensed with, and that the journal show has been read a third time at length, section by section, and placed before the Senate for final consideration.
You've heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered, and Senator Burtonshaw is recognized to open debate.
Good Senators, I bring before you today a wolf depredation bill that changes Idaho code and statute to some degree. The bill, if you have it there, I'm just going to go through the changes real quick, and most of those are all of those are underlined, and then we can have that discussion on the bill. On page 1, we have just changed on line 25 from code that was before, we put in there private contractors. On page 2, we have changed the year on line 23 to 2022, and on line 25 from 110,000 to 300,000. And then at the bottom, we have just 2 quick changes that talks about the money transfer, and you can see they're underlined right there, just 3 words. And then we get into the meat of the legislation. Now, here we're going to classify what wildlife is, and wolves are classified as big game animals. And it says in subsection 2, it says, notwithstanding the classification assigned to wolves, all methods of take, including but not limited to all methods utilized by the United States Fish and Game Service and the United States Department of Agriculture Wildlife Services, shall be authorized for the management of wolves in accordance with existing laws or approved management plans. And then the addition that's underlined there on line 28. In addition, any method utilized for the take of any wild canine in Idaho shall be available for the taking of wolves. Under subsection 3, it says on line 30, wolf trapping season shall be opened year-round on all private ground, just private ground or private property, as long as individuals are in compliance with the permission requirements contained in section 36-1603 Idaho Code before entering private property. And then the second part of that just talks about the fact that we want to use collars where we can to assist in population counts of the wolves. Finally, down on line 44, it says, and it's underlined there, all Idaho wolf tags will be valid for hunting, trapping, and snaring in any unit when seasons are open at the time of take. So all that does is at the first of every year when you renew your hunting license, you can buy a wolf tag. The hunters are on a calendar year and the trappers are on a fiscal year. So we're just going to move that all into one category. So if you buy a wolf tag, you qualify for either hunting or trapping. The second sentence there is, there shall be no limit of the number of wolf tags that an individual can purchase. So that raises the bar. You can buy as many wolf tags as you want to. The third part, all appropriate fish and game education requirements must be met. Now if you turn back to page 9, here on line 10, we're talking about livestock and domestic animals. And there's just a few changes there. On line 14, it says, wolves so taken shall be reported to the director within 30 days. It's changed from 10 days to 30 days. And then on line 19, it says, wolves may be disposed of by any federal agency, state agency, private contractor, political subdivision of the state of Idaho, or any agency of another state. And then on line 22, it says the Wolf Depredation Control Board shall be authorized to renew such permits or transfer such permits to a different contracting party. Then we're on line 30, and we're talking about wildlife populations. If you start with line 30, it says wolves may be disposed of by any federal agency, state agency, private contractor, political subdivision of the state of Idaho, or agency of another state when the population has exceeded the recovery goals of the Idaho Wolf Conservation Plan in an effort to maintain a balance of all wildlife populations. Now, there's been some question about what it means, an agency of another state. So, if we border Wyoming and we have wolves in Idaho that are moving inside the Wyoming boundaries and depredating on livestock there, the county commissioners could apply for a permit from the director of the state in the state of Idaho to take those wolves. And what that's just like buying an out-of-state tag for a hunter, or an out-of-state fishing license if you went to Alaska, and that's the purpose there. And so that's what it means to have an agency of another state. Second, the wolves so taken shall be reported to the director within 30 days of being taken. And third, a permit must be obtained from the director. So, good senators, you have in your packet a letter from the Smith family, Mount Bora Ranch, and they talk about the depredation that's happening in their area. And they gave some suggestions to me in 2019 of how we could move forward to help with this depredation problem. Of course, there was a little anger in their tone. They had lost some animals, and this is pretty typical of what we have found throughout the state. The purpose of this legislation is to control the population, not to wipe them out. There's never been any discussion in the working group of a complete annihilation of the wolf population or killing 90% of the wolves like has been claimed in the paper. There has never been any discussion of that. In the last 2 years, well, there it is up front. In the last 2 years, the Fish and Game have gone out with 566 cameras and set them on game trails and wherever the wolves have been in action. Out of those 566 cameras, only 201 of them had pictures of wolves. And so of those pictures that they took, there were 7 million of them. So they had to go through all those pictures and do facial recognition, marks and recognition of all the wolves. Now in 2019, they did a count, and the count was 1,566 wolves in the state of Idaho. That was their best estimate. In 2019, we killed 584 wolves were taken in the state of Idaho. In 2020, 1,556 wolves were counted in the state of Idaho. So we dropped the population by 10 wolves, according to their pictures and best estimates. So right now, we're maintaining that 1,500 wolves in the state of Idaho. The depredation is real and scatters throughout the vast majority of central Idaho and northern Idaho. And so this is why this committee has come forward and provided this legislation. You need to know that in January, we were going to have this wolf meeting and start this legislation. But it came to us that the Fish and Game didn't have all their counts yet. And we wanted to wait till they finished their count. They had 7 million pictures to go through to get their count. So we waited till the middle of February. I set up a meeting in the middle of February and then went down with COVID for 2 weeks. And as you know, former Senator Sidaway comes set in for me. And he conducted that meeting. After that meeting, we planned another meeting to sit down and to pound this out. After that meeting, 4 pieces of legislation come forward. You may have signed Senator Sidaway's. And we had one from the cattlemen, one from Representative Gibbs, and one from Representative Boyle. And they didn't all have the same ideas. We went in to sit down at the meeting, and we literally sat at the table, and Representative Gibbs come in and he sat down and he says, "This meeting's closed down. The Speaker has shut down all committees, and we're going to recess for however long that was, a couple of weeks." So that set us back as well. But the committee kept meeting. And let me tell you who the committee was. It was the cattlemen, the wool growers, Fish and Game, the sportsmen, Farm Bureau, and the Trappers Association. And that's who developed this bill. They wouldn't allow any legislators in those meetings. And they kept it under their hat until they had an agreement between all those sources. And once that agreement come, then they released the document and we started the process. So if we talk about things coming at the end of the session things are just coming fast or coming at the end of the session, it was 3 months of work to get there. And that's why this bill is here before you today. And with that, Madam President, the debate is open.
Is there any further debate?
Madam President,
Senator Stinnett.
would the good senator from 35 yield to an inquiry?
Will the senator
will
from
yield.
35 yield to a question from the senator from District 26?
I will yield.
Senator Stinnett.
Thank you, Madam President. When you talk about on page 3, lines 27 through 29, and talking about any method utilized for the take that would be used for wild canine, and I understand that would be things like ATV, UTV, snowmobile, helicopters, anything you can think of. Does that also include cyanide traps?
Senator Burtonshaw.
Madam President and Senator Stinnett, I don't know about cyanide traps. Last I heard about them, they were not used, or is that right? They're not legal in the state of Idaho, is what I understood. And I would sure stand for correction if that was false. So that's my understanding.
Madam President, would the senator yield further?
Will the senator yield further?
Yes.
Senator Stinnett.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator, you had mentioned just now in your opening that that this would be unlimited number of tags allowed in any unit that as a normal season opens. And so for clarity, the Fish and Game just determined that 2 units around my area and some of the area around the Boise foothills, because of high recreation density, that those would remain closed. Is it my understanding that this doesn't overreach that decision by Fish and Game, and that those units would still be remained closed as was determined by Fish and Game?
Senator Burtonshaw.
Madam President and Senator Stinnett, I don't know about the Boise foothills, but I know that in the regulations, and I have those here, that in Unit 48 and 49, which covers Blaine County, there is no trapping season at this time. And those rules would still be in effect.
Thank you. To debate the bill, Madam President?
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am, in this bill, I have to say, grateful that Fish and Game is still part of the management of wolves, because I understand some of the other bills that are being entertained this session have eliminated them. Partly because we have to remember that we are supposed to be navigating under the 2002 Wolf Management Plan, which is our agreement with the federal government, with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, on how we are given autonomy as a state to manage wolves. And unfortunately, from what I can determine when I've asked before, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was never brought into the discussion to put this together, that this was determined by the organizations that the good senator from 35 have mentioned. And so we are held to that agreement. And I think part of the reason why it's a little concerning to me on page 9 when the good senator mentioned that that the wolves can be disposed of or killed by the various agencies and departments or an agency of another state. Our agreement is with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the state of Idaho, not for Wyoming, not for Montana, not Washington, not Oregon, Idaho. And so when you allow other states to come in and have some kind of say on how you manage wolves in your state, plus that you don't consult the people we are supposed to be speaking to under the agreement, and you change wolves in this from what was determined that we would have this agreement if wolves were determined to be big game. And in this language, we're changing it to predator, which I guess goes against, again, the agreement we had in 2002. So this does create a conflict because it changes the rules of compliance. Beyond that, there was the discussion that every time we talk about how many wolves the Fish and Game and/or this group that we are now going to contract with private contractors, when asked about who these private contractors were and what kind of threshold or criteria they'd be held to, I was told it was too broad of a contract and it was likely expensive and we should just leave it to the free market. I don't know how you feel about us managing our wildlife left to the free market, but apparently there's not very many parameters on who we have to justify holding our private contractor to. And that, again, if they don't understand clearly what is expected of them, then there is very little control over what they will do. There was discussion about, 90%. Well, okay, if you have 584 wolves that are taken in 2019, and this has been happening for 2 or 3 years, that it has held at 1,500 wolves, which is really about 900 adults, and then you have the pups that come up that push it up to about 1,500. And over the last 3 years, you've maintained a population of around 1,500. That seems like what we're hunting and what we have out there has created a stability. But when you ask that, I'm told, no, we're not. We are only held to having, according to the agreement, 10 packs, which is about 100 to 150 wolves. Was that a floor or a ceiling? So if we're only held to 150 wolves, and you think that maintaining a stabilized population is too large for predator and management, then in order to get to 150 wolves, that is a 90% culling. And that's just the formula. So when you hear that, that's following the formula we're being told about what it is we want to do to manage wolves. The other thing is when asked about all the money that's going to go into this, we have a pretty hefty amount in the Wolf Depredation Control Board coffers that already goes to the private property owners and those who say that they have depredation. And we do a really good job paying out people who are private property owners who have livestock who feel like they're being impacted by predators. So now we're doing a second program to give those same people a second program in order for them to be able to have the luxury of having 2 programs supplied by the state and making sure that we can cull more wolves on those properties. And I just wish we'd had 1% of that to give to tourism or recreation or something, because we do give quite a bit to making sure that wolves are eliminated around the state. So I guess the question is how far we go with this, whether this puts us in jeopardy with a program, how far are we, that we haven't even spoken to the people we have an agreement with in order for us to have the autonomy to have wolves. And it's concerning that we We have talked to a small faction of the population about this, and the fact that it's unlimited tags with unlimited use of anything that could possibly even be cyanide traps. I know they said that they didn't, but I understand during the Trump administration that was loosened up. I'm hoping that the state continues to not allow for that, given how an animal and a child were hurt the last time they were used by Fish and Game in eastern Idaho. But it is unlimited, and so I think there needs to be a broader discussion and considering we're under a federal agreement. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Harris.
Madam President, debate in favor of the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, cyanide traps were brought up. There is no such thing as a cyanide trap. It's called an M44. And after the incident in Pocatello, to my knowledge, Wildlife Services won't allow their use in Idaho any longer. Senators, Madam President, this is a wolf depredation bill, and it affects livelihoods. It affects livelihoods of our wool growers and our cattlemen across the state of Idaho. And just for a little bit of background, Senators, I'll just use an example that we were involved in a little bit. As we used to haul cattle commercially for ranchers when they sold their cattle in the fall. And there's a particular guy that owned yearlings, stalkers. Now, just to explain what the stalker does is he goes and buys a bunch of calves weighing 600-700 pounds, and he puts them on grass in the summer, or they can be his own cattle. He doesn't have to buy them. But he has quite a bit of expense in those stalkers, and he'll keep them on grass until they are weigh 900 pounds, 950 pounds, 1,000 pounds, whatever. Depends on how good the year is and how good the grass is. But just as an idea how much money is involved in these calves, a guy that's a stalker that sells stalkers, the yearlings, he's lucky to make $100 a head. There's lots of expenses. There's trucking, there's feed, there's their pasture if he has to rent the pasture, there's vaccine, vet bill, and the expenses go on. Anyway, back to my story of a certain individual that had a bunch of calves, and when you have these calves, you treat them with kid gloves because you're selling pounds. You're selling the weight. So you don't want them to run, you don't want them to be excited, you don't want to disturb them in any way. So as you get ready to sell these calves, as this guy did, you bring them into the corral, close to the corral where the loading chute is, about 3 or 4 days in advance of the sell date, because they'll walk that fence and they'll go a day or two without gaining weight, and you want them in that field and you want them to gain. So you put them in there early so they can get the fence figured out, and then they settle down and gain their weight back. You don't want these cattle to be excited in any way because that's your payday, that's your livelihood. Well, this particular gentleman, rancher that we was hauling for, ordered several trucks, 5 or 6 of them, I believe. And we showed up to haul them that morning. And as he went out to gather his yearlings, they were gone. Every last one of them were gone. The pack of wolves had come in that night and run them off. Senators, this is this guy's payday. It's his livelihood. And his livelihood was gone. He spent all day, him and his cowboys and his boys, rounding up these cattle. The weight was run off of him, and he was a half a semi-load short of his full allotment. These wolves, there's too many in the state of Idaho now. We're supposed to have 115 packs, 150 wolves. We're up to 1,553. This is the last count, 1,556, something like that. They're destroying ranchers. They're destroying wildlife. this is a needed bill. It gives the Fish and Game Commission and the Wolf Control Board an added tool to help our citizens, to help our producers, our livestock producers. And anyway, it's a good bill. Thank you, Senators.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Madam President. Wasn't quite ready. I'd like to stand in debate. I am going to support the bill, but I would like to share a few comments with the floor. The first one I'd like to share, just to get some information out, is from the Wolf Management Plan, if I can get my computer to work here. Madam President, from the Idaho Wolf Conservation and Management Plan, if I may read from that and reference it in my comments.
Having identified the source, the senator may read.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, I just want to share a few things with you because you may or may not have heard of this plan to begin with. And then secondly, I think there's some comments in here that are timely to today's discussion and where we move forward. And this is coming from someone who I think in the past sometimes has asked these types of questions of bill sponsors on other species too. So please, if you'll be patient with me. So from the plan, the executive summary, the goal of this conservation and management plan is to ensure the long-term survival of wolves in Idaho while minimizing wolf-human conflicts that result when wolves and people live in the same vicinity. Conservation of wolves requires management. And again, the date on this is March of 2002. The Wolf Oversight Committee background, the Idaho Legislature's Wolf Oversight Committee that drafted this plan was created in 1992. That was House Bill 773 for your reference, as established by the Wolf EIS Participation Plan dated February of 1992. And as I go down through here, there's a summary of wolf management actions. I'd be happy to forward that to you if you asked to review this later. But there's a couple of comments in here. This plan will enable the transition of the management of the gray wolf back to the Idaho Fish and Game as either a big game animal, fur bearer, or special classification of predator that provides for controlled take after delisting. This classification will enable Idaho Fish and Game to provide protection for wolves, as well as consider the impacts of wolves on other big game species, those sectors of the economy dependent upon sport hunting, livestock, domestic animals, and humans. This is slow, and I apologize. There's within this plan, it talks about kill rates of wolves and during early and late winter months. It talks about the age structures of elk and deer and others and wolf killed samples compared with the population or the proportions in the population, which I think is important to mention that these have been studied. They continue to be studied. It plays into this decision moving forward. It will as Fish and Game looks at it. Responsibilities of affected agencies and entities. A comment was shared on the floor here about working with other states, and it very clearly says here that the governor of the state of Idaho, excuse me, has charged his Office of Species Conservation to work in partnership with the governors of the other states and other regional partners to ensure that delisting and long-term management of wolves across the three-state area. So I think it's important to mention that because it's relevant to this bill where we talk about maybe the state of Wyoming have to work with the state of Idaho. So I think it's a very valid part of the mission in trying to be successful in this program, but for the wolves also. In the unlikely event the population falls below 10 packs, depredations will also be addressed with non-lethal control unless unusual circumstances absolutely necessitate the use of lethal control to end the depredation problem. Except for the lethal control measures, wolf management will revert to the same provisions that were in effect to recover the wolf populations prior to delisting, and that's found in 50 CFR Part 17. So there are some protections in here, I believe. This is kind of a long paragraph, but I'd like to read it to you. Wolves, when delisted, will become a component of the native resident wildlife in Idaho. The designation of the wolf as a big game species, fur bearer, or special classification of predator that provides for controlled take provides legal authorization for Idaho Department of Fish and Game to manage the species. Management includes inventory, predator-prey research, harvest monitoring, cooperation with agencies, individuals, tribes, other states, and Canada, control to reduce depredation, and dissemination to the public of current, accurate information. In Idaho, hunting and trapping may be considered in the future. Again, this was written in 1992. In Idaho, hunting and trapping may be considered in the future when populations are at levels that justify public taking. If this is proposed by Idaho Fish and Game, there will be opportunity for full public comment, and decisions will be based on sound biological data. Hunting of wolves may be authorized when necessary to meet big game harvest objectives and eliminate conflicts, while at the same time maintaining wolves at recovery levels that will ensure viable, self-sustaining populations. And I think that gets back to a comment we heard earlier from the sponsor, excuse me, and about the 90% kill rate. I've not heard that number either. And then, now this is going to be kind of a criticism, I think, a little bit of this bill, but that's okay. We're here to do that. Also be critics where there may be areas for improvement. It says in this 1992 plan, Idaho Fish and Game will update this plan periodically and submit any changes to the Idaho legislature as if it were a new plan submitted for approval, amendment, or rejection under Section 36-2405 Idaho Code. And I presume that code is current today. I don't know. And then, Madam President, I'd like to share one other resource, and this is from an email that I received from Paul Klein, who's the Deputy Director of the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, dated Tuesday, April 20th, 2021.
Having identified the source, the senator may read.
So, Senators, I had a concern about that comment in the plan from 1992 about updates being provided when needed. And so I called Fish and Game and asked them about any updates to that plan, because I need to know that as I consider the language in this bill and whether or not this is good policy for the state of Idaho. And I would like to read you his response. He didn't know I was going to do this, and I didn't know I was going to do it. So if they're listening, I ask for your forgiveness. Senator Johnson, to answer your voicemail, there have been no amendments to the 2002 wolf plan that was approved by the legislature in support of wolf delisting. The 2002 plan states that when there are more than 15 packs, the Commission updates wolf plans in the same process as all other species management plans. The language you referenced on page 24 is interesting. From my asking around, this document was prepared to provide the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service some confidence that wolf populations would be maintained at safe levels under state management following delisting. All updating was to occur outside of this plan through species management plans like elk, deer, bear, wolf, and others, as mentioned above. And then Deputy Director Klein provides some additional information. He says in 2008, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued a rule delisting gray wolves in Idaho, but a federal court decision resulted in relisting. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service made changes and issued a new delisting rule in 2009, but wolves were once again relisted after a federal court decision. In April 2011, Congress directed the reissuance of the 2009 delisting rule in a budget rider. The Commission developed a wolf species management plan in 2008, but withdrew the plan with the bouncing back and forth of delisting and relisting. The Commission has not finalized a species management plan since the 2011 congressionally directed delisting. The Commission has directed the Department to reduce wolf population numbers and take measures to reduce predation impacts, both on livestock and domestic animals, and where elk populations are below objective. The Commission has increasingly expanded hunting and trapping seasons and control actions in the years since delisting to control the population and reduce predation impacts. And I share this now for your information. The Commission is scheduled to meet Thursday morning, that is tomorrow morning, to discuss this bill. So if you'd like to participate or have any question, get a hold of Idaho Fish and Game or listen in tomorrow morning. I plan to do that. In March, a few weeks ago, the Commission expanded 2021-2022 trapping seasons to year-round on private land in units with chronic livestock depredations, except in the areas of Ada County and Blaine County, with snaring allowed November 15th to March 31st and foothold traps only in other months. And then he gives me some information about my district. And I share all of this with you for a couple of reasons. I found it to be very informative, but it also gives me confidence in my decision today. But I would also like to say, too, that I think it's my responsibility also to hold the commission accountable. And whatever they need to do to update that plan, that 2011 plan, and prepare that and bring that back to us so we can review that in the committee in light of this decision, I think is very important. And so I hope that they're listening, and I'm sure they're aware of this, but I think that's something that we need as a legislature to make good decisions, informed decisions about the management of wolves in Idaho. So we're depending on them, and I just appreciate all that they do for us. This is a tough issue, but I am going to support it, even though the plan is not current. I'm going to continue to work with them after today's decision, fail or pass, on this issue. So, Madam President, Senators, I appreciate your patience with me. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Burgoyne.
Thank you, Madam President. So I thought it might be worth observing what we know. What we know is that the bill opens the door to killing more wolves. And why does the bill open the door to killing more wolves? Because there's a feeling, at least among some, that there are too many wolves. And we know that the agreement with the federal government says that Idaho needs to have at least, roughly speaking, 150 wolves. Now, does everyone in Idaho want to kill enough wolves that the number of wolves we have left over is 150? No, maybe not. But is there anything in the law that will say we can't kill enough wolves that we end up with 150? I don't see anything in the bill that says that you have to stop at 25% or 30% or 50% or 75% or 80% or 89%. But we do know that if we want to maintain our agreement with the federal government, we need to stop at 90%. That's what we know. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there further debate? Hearing none. Senator Burtonshaw is recognized to close debate.
So many things to comment on. I appreciate the great debate. I wanted to say that we're not trying to destroy the whole wolf population, but we want to be able to manage it. And we want to work with Fish and Game and the Commission. And I received a note from the director of the Fish and Game, and he reprimanded me just a little bit for making a statement that he felt like was false. So he said Senator Fish and Game was not invited to participate in the development of this bill. We were asked at the last minute to provide input, and we did. And it improved the draft. So Senator Harris and I had a meeting with Deputy Director Klein to discuss those things. It's not our intention to run over the Fish and Game, and it's not our intention to run over the Commission. It's our intention to provide more tools to manage the wolf population that we have. When we talk about 150 wolves in the state of Idaho, if you read, and Madam Chairman, I have a document here that's called the Federal Register, and it's from the Department of Interior. It's entitled Rocky Mountain Population of Gray Wolves as a Distinct Population Segment. Is it okay to?
Having identified the source, the senator may read.
Nice reading at nighttime. But a member of our Wolf Control Board contacted Fish and Game and said, what is the agreement between U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the state of Idaho? And our statement was, there isn't one. So what does that mean? In this document, the Department of Interior, Fish and Wildlife Services made recommendations to Idaho. That was in April 2nd, 2008. Idaho's management plan reflects what comes out of this document. There is no agreement between us and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. The management plan was a probation plan to help us with delisting the wolves. So let me just talk to you a little bit about, number one, the good senator brought up a political subdivision. A political subdivision is just like county commissioners saying, okay, we have depredating wolves in Montana and they're coming out of Idaho. We want a permit to take care of that wolf problem. They go to the director provides a permit. It's just like buying an out-of-state tag. Private contractors, that's up to the Wolf Board to hire them. Let me give you an example of the expenses. This is in the Lolo zone. And when I first come to this legislature, we were having a problem in that Lolo zone, and I talked to the previous director about that. The statistics that were given to me by Ray Houston of Legislative Services said that there were about 16,000 head of elk in that Lolo zone in 1995. And in 2014 or 15 or 16, when I asked him this question, there was about 1,100 elk in that Lolo zone. That's depredation. And in that Lolo zone, and this is provided to me by the director of the Fish and Game, in that Lolo zone between 2015 and 2021, we spent $557,835 to remove 81 wolves. It's costly. The Wolf Depredation Board has spent over $3 million, $3,552 to remove 365 wolves in 6 years. We have a problem we're trying to deal with. We understand that everybody's passionate about wolves. Again, I say it's not our desire to wipe them out. And in reality, Madam Chair, I need to declare a Rule 39H because I've had family that has had depredation problems. This is not an indemnity bill. In other words, there's no livestock paid for that are lost in this depredation bill that I have before you today. I want to give you just a brief, if I can find it. Year to date, and this was up as of about a month ago, we had lost 753 head of cattle, 925 sheep, 54 other animals like dogs, goats, horses. And the U.S. Wildlife Services had performed 701 control actions. And what this means, to help you understand, is if a producer feels like he has wildlife or a wolf that has wolves that have killed animals, then Wildlife Services comes out and they skin the animal, they look at it, they try to determine the cause of death and what caused that death. If they can confirm that it was a wolf, then that goes on here. If they can't confirm it, it doesn't go on these statistics. So a lot of times when you have cattle out in your pasture, when you finally find a dead one, it's bones and hide. So you can't determine what killed that animal. If you placed a price of those cattle of just $1,000, that'd be $753,000 on the ones we could find and make sure they were killed by wolves. That comes out of the producer's pocket. And you say, well, there's indemnity. But you talk to Senator Sidaway, who's lost over $400,000 in sheep. He said he's received pennies on the dollar. So it doesn't cover it. So what about a cow that costs $1,000 and we lose the cow? That's the first loss. The second loss is the money he has to put out to replace that cow. And so I really want you to understand that it's not necessarily a war on wolves, but it's a war on depredation that happens within our state on a regular basis. I hope you can understand that the best of intentions were part of this bill. And believe me, it had many iterations before it had a final destination for our committees. And I ask you to support this, and that's the end of my debate.
The President will note that the Senator's declaration of Rule 39H will be duly noted in the Journal. And debate being closed, the question is, shall Senate Bill number 1211 pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Hagenbrod. Anthem. Bear. Bayer. Burgoyne. Burtonshaw. Cook. Crabtree. Den Hartog. Grow. Guthrie. Harris. Hyder.
Madam Chair, 60 seconds. Madam President, 60 seconds to explain my vote.
Senator Hyder has 60 seconds to explain his vote.
Good senators, 11 years ago we had this exact debate, and at that time, good Senator Sidaway said that he was going to stake out his wife's dog, Fifi, in the field to attract wolves so that he could shoot the wolves that were coming after his sheep. Well, it was a short time later that I was standing in his kitchen, and he got a phone call from his son saying, Dad, 150 of our sheep have been run off a cliff by the wolves, and the wolves are in the valley eating the sheep. This is a real issue, good senators. Nobody knows it better than our good Senator Sidaway, and we need to do something about the wolves in Idaho, and this senator votes aye.
Senator Hyder votes aye.
Johnson. Lakey. Lee. Lent. Lodge. Martin. Nelson. Nye. Patrick. Robbie. Rice. Ricks. Riggs. Souza. Stennett. Thane. Vick. Ward Engelking. Winder. Wintrow. Woodward. Zito. Den Hartog. Nelson. Thane. Ward Engelking.
Madam President, 60 seconds.
Senator Ward Engelking has 60 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President and fellow senators. I am very concerned about the number of wolves in Idaho. I think they've increased to a level where they are concerns, not just for cattlemen and sheepmen, but also for tourists. But I am disturbed by the fact that the Fish and Game was not at the table when this bill was written, and so for that reason, the senator votes nay.
Senator Ward Engelking votes nay. Roll call shows 26 ayes, 7 nays, 2 absent and excused, a majority having voted in the affirmative. Senate Bill 1211 has passed the Senate. Is there a correction to the title? Hearing none, the title is also approved, and Senate Bill 1211 will be transmitted to the House of Representatives.